Welcome to the deep dive, everyone, where we take a deep dive into personal finance. And, you're going to want to hold on tight because things are getting pretty wild out there,
Yeah, definitely keeping us all on our toes.
both in like the traditional markets
Yeah.
and then also over in the crypto world.
Yeah, it really is an interesting time to sort of watch it all unfold.
So let's kick things off by talking about the Federal Reserve. They just announced an interest rate cut,
Mm-hmm.
but they're also saying that there are only going to be two more adjustments in 2025.
Mm-hmm.
So what does this mean for like the average person who's, trying to manage their money?
Well, I think the rate cut itself, you can almost think of it like the Fed is kind of gently tapping the brakes on the economy.
Oh, okay.
And they're trying to find that sweet spot,
Yeah.
not too hot, not too cold, where things can kind of grow at a good pace. But it's the projection of only two more adjustments that I think is, that's where it gets interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, because it kind of hints that maybe there's some uncertainty.
Right.
Like maybe they're a little worried about inflation, still kind of lurking around the corner.
So it's sort of a mixed message.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
we're okay, but also be careful.
It is. It's a very mixed message. You see, the Fed, they have to walk this tightrope.
Yeah.
They want to encourage growth, but then at the same time, they want to keep prices stable, which is, I always say, it's like trying to balance a seesaw with like a bowling ball on one side and a feather on the other.
Right. Right.
To really understand it, you kind of have to think about the neutral interest rate.
Okay.
Have you heard of that?
No, tell me about it.
Okay, so this is kind of like the like Goldilocks.
Okay.
Not too hot, not too cold,
Right.
but finding that perfect temperature, it's tricky.
Yeah.
And the Fed right now, they're being extra cautious.
Okay. So what does all this mean for people who are making like everyday financial decisions? Like if you're thinking about buying a house
Hmm.
or taking out a loan.
Well, it's all about timing. This rate cut probably means that you'll see like slightly lower interest rates
Hmm.
on things like mortgages and other loans.
Okay.
So it might be a pretty good time to borrow, but then, only two more adjustments until 2025.
Right.
Rates could go up again. So it's really, really important to do your research, crunch the numbers. It's a good reminder that, what the Fed does, even though it seems like it's very distant and technical, it can actually really have an impact on your wallet.
No, it does. Yeah. All right. Let's switch gears and talk about crypto. Bitcoin has been in the news a lot lately
Yeah,
because the price has been swinging up and down.
it has.
And we're also seeing this rise in what they call Bitcoin dominance. So can you explain what exactly that means and why should we care?
You can kind of think of Bitcoin dominance as a popularity contest in the crypto world.
Okay.
It's basically measuring like what percentage of the total market value of all the cryptocurrencies out there is held by Bitcoin.
Got it.
So when it goes up, like it is right now, it usually means that people are moving their money out of the smaller cryptocurrencies, the altcoins as they call them,
Okay.
and back into Bitcoin because Bitcoin is seen as, kind of the safer bet.
Oh, so it's like the big fish.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you're not sure what to eat, you might go for the well-known restaurant instead of trying the trendy new food truck.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's not always a bad thing, but it can be a sign that there's fear in the market,
Yeah.
uncertainty.
So when Bitcoin dominance is going up, that's not good news for all the other cryptocurrencies out there.
Not necessarily. It's not always a party for the rest of them.
Right.
But there are exceptions. Like take Ripple, for example. They just launched this new stablecoin called RLUSD.
Mhm.
And stablecoins, they're designed to be less volatile.
Oh, okay.
Like that friend that never gets too high or too low. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you.
You can count on them. And this one is pegged to the US dollar.
Oh.
So it's actually, it could be a much more stable option in the crypto world.
Okay, so while Bitcoin is like the strong oak in the storm,
Mm-hmm.
Ripple is trying to like, I don't know, bring some stability to the roller coaster.
Exactly.
Okay, I like it.
You got it. It's a really interesting development. I think it's worth watching, It shows how much innovation there is in the crypto world, all the competition. And that's ultimately good for people
Yeah,
because you have more options.
definitely. All right, speaking of roller coasters, let's talk about the stock market.
Okay.
It's sitting at this record valuation, like $64 trillion,
They know.
which sounds amazing,
Mm-hmm.
but is there, a catch?
Well, you know what they say about finance? There's always a catch. It reminds me of what happened back in the 1980s.
Okay.
Remember, the market was going crazy, valuations were super high, and then boom, inflation just hit so hard. I'm not saying it's going to happen again, but, it's a good reminder. What goes up can also come down.
Right. Like when you're at the top of the Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
The view is amazing,
Yeah,
but you got to come back down at some point.
exactly. Enjoy the ride, but just, buckle up.
Right.
Be prepared for some turbulence.
Makes sense. Okay, so let's talk about Bitcoin. Some people think that it could become like a global reserve currency.
It's interesting, isn't it?
It is.
There's a lot of debate about that. Some people think it's the future of money. Other people, not so much.
Right. So break it down for us. What's the argument?
Okay, so on the one hand, you've got the Bitcoin enthusiasts.
Okay.
They believe that it's decentralized, it's got a limited supply,
Right.
and they think it's a good way to protect yourself from inflation.
Okay.
They see it as like the David going up against the Goliath, like the US dollar.
Mm-hmm.
They think it could disrupt the whole system.
And what about the other side?
Well, the other side thinks that Bitcoin's a bit of a wild card.
Okay. Yeah.
They say it's too volatile. It could be used for illegal activities, and
Yeah.
there's no regulation. So they're basically saying it's too risky. It can't be a global reserve currency.
So it's like a battle for the future of money.
Yeah, a clash of ideologies. It really shows you how much tension there is between tradition and innovation,
Mm-hmm.
and the financial world is always changing.
Yeah, that's true. All right, let's talk about Ethereum. We're seeing all this hype about these ETH ETFs.
Yes,
And some people are saying that the price could go all the way up to $4,800.
it's possible.
So what's driving all this excitement? And should we be, jumping on this bandwagon?
Well, Ethereum has really become like the go-to platform for all these decentralized applications and smart contracts.
Okay.
And the fact that you've got ETH ETFs, it means that the big players are getting interested, the institutions.
Oh,
But you have to remember, it's still crypto, it's volatile,
yeah, true.
so you got to do your research,
Yeah.
before you make any decisions.
So even though the price predictions are exciting, we got to, look beyond the hype
Exactly.
and really understand it.
It's like buying a new gadget,
Okay.
You wouldn't buy it without knowing what it does.
Right.
And if it's actually something you need.
Good point. All right, well, that wraps up part one of our deep dive.
Wow.
We talked about a lot. The Fed,
A lot.
Bitcoin,
We did.
Ethereum.
It's a lot to digest.
It is, but it's
Yeah.
all really important to understand. So in part two, we're going to zoom out a little bit, look at the big picture. What are the big macro trends that are shaping things?
Yes.
And how do we navigate all of this? So stay tuned.
Yeah, we'll be right back. Welcome back to our deep dive.
All right, so before we jumped into the specifics of the Fed and crypto and all that, we're talking about how it's all connected.
Right. Yeah, it's like this giant puzzle.
Yeah.
You got the Fed over here trying to balance everything, and then crypto's over there just on a roller coaster. And the stock market's hitting these record highs. It can be kind of overwhelming to think about it all.
It really can. So can you help us zoom out a little bit?
Yeah.
What are the big things, the macro trends that we should be watching?
Okay, so I think the biggest thing is this tension that we're seeing between inflation and growth. All over the world, central banks are trying to figure out how to get inflation under control without hurting the economy.
Oh, okay.
It's like trying to steer a boat through a really narrow channel.
Oh, yeah.
One wrong move and you could run aground.
So the Fed's not just doing their own thing over here?
No, not at all. They're part of this global dance.
Okay.
Everyone's trying to find the right rhythm, and then you've got all this geopolitical stuff happening,
Right.
tensions between countries, trade wars, energy prices going up and down. All of that creates a lot of volatility, and it definitely affects how investors are feeling.
It all sounds kind of anxiety-inducing, if I'm being honest.
I get it. It can be a lot.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that volatility can also create opportunity, If you're prepared, if you understand the basics, and if you're thinking long-term, these times can actually be, they can be pretty rewarding.
So let's talk strategy then.
Yeah.
If we're all in this boat together, trying to navigate these choppy waters, what can we do to stay afloat?
Well, first of all, you got to diversify.
Oh,
Like the old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
Spread your investments out, different asset classes, different countries, different industries. That way, if one market tanks, you're not totally wiped out.
So don't bet it all on one horse race.
Exactly. And then think about your time horizon. How long are you planning to invest for? If you're in it for the long haul, you can ride out the dips. But if you need that money soon, you got to be more careful.
It's about knowing yourself and knowing your goals.
Absolutely. And that's where education comes in. The more you know, the better decisions you can make.
Knowledge is power, right?
It is. It's about empowering yourself, taking control.
Okay, so let's bring it back to some of the things we talked about earlier, like Bitcoin. Do you really think it could become a global reserve currency?
It's a really interesting idea, and I think it's important to be open-minded about these things. Bitcoin it's definitely come a long way, and it does have some advantages, being decentralized.
But you're not ready to say it's going to take over the world just yet.
I'm consciously optimistic, let's say. There are still a lot of challenges, with the technology and the regulations, but just the fact that we're having this conversation, it shows how much things have changed.
That's true. And what about all the other cryptocurrencies out there?
Oh, yeah, the altcoins. Definitely worth paying attention to.
Right.
Ethereum is doing some amazing things,
Really?
especially with smart contracts. And then you've got Solana and Avalanche. They're really pushing the boundaries.
So for people who are like kind of curious about crypto, but maybe a little bit intimidated by, how volatile it can be, what would you tell them?
I would say start small, do your research, and be prepared for a wild ride.
Okay.
It's not for the faint of heart, that's for sure, but it can be pretty exciting.
Yeah, as long as you're willing to learn.
Exactly. That's the key.
All right, well, we've covered a lot of ground here, from like the big global picture down to like specific strategies.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap up this part of the deep dive?
I think the biggest takeaway is that we are living in a time of just incredible change in the financial world.
Yeah.
It's exciting, but it can also be a little bit scary. The best thing you can do is just stay informed, be strategic, and keep learning.
I love that.
Oh.
All right, well, in part 3, we're going to bring it all home. We're going to talk about how all of this applies to you, your personal finances. So don't go anywhere. All right, we're back for the final part of our financial deep dive. We've talked about a lot, the global economy, the Fed, crypto, the stock market. But now I want to talk about you, the listener, your own personal financial journey. What does all this mean for you?
Yeah, how do we actually take all this information and actually do something with it?
Exactly. So let's get practical. Like, what are the golden rules of personal finance in this crazy world that we live in?
Okay, so rule number 1, this is like the most important thing. Spend less than you earn.
Okay.
It sounds simple, but it's the key to like everything else. You got to track your expenses, make a budget, figure out where you can cut back, because those little things, those daily expenses, they can really add up. Like, that latte every morning.
Yeah.
Or those online shopping sprees.
Right, the latte factor. I've heard about that.
Yeah, exactly. It's the little things. All right, so once you've got your spending under control, rule number 2 is you got to start investing early and often. Time is your best friend when it comes to investing, because of this thing called compound interest, which basically means that even small amounts of money can grow, like a lot over time. If you start early, like planting a tree, the sooner you plant it, the bigger it'll grow.
I've always heard about compound interest, but I've never really understood how it works, like in real life. Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say you start investing $100 a month when you're 25. And you're getting an average return of like 7% per year.
Okay.
By the time you retire, at 65, you'll have over $280,000.
Wow.
But if you wait until you're 35 to start, you'll only have like $125,000. That's a big difference.
Yeah, it is. Okay, I get it. Start early. What's the next rule?
Rule number 3, diversify. We talked about this a little bit already, but it's important, so I'm going to say it again. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Invest in different things. Stocks, bonds, real estate, maybe even a little crypto if you're feeling adventurous.
So it's like putting together a good team. You need different players with different skills.
Exactly. And then rule number 4, never stop learning. Things are always changing in the financial world. So stay curious, read books, listen to podcasts like this one, talk to financial advisors, keep learning new things.
So it's a lifelong journey.
It is.
Of learning and adapting. But sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming, To be honest, personal finance can be very intimidating. Any tips on how to make it feel a little less scary?
Yeah, definitely. Just break it down into small steps. Don't try to do everything at once. Start with something easy, like making a budget or setting up an emergency fund, and celebrate your wins. Every little victory, it's all about progress, not perfection.
Progress, not perfection. I like that. And I think a lot of this comes down to mindset too, right?
Absolutely. How you think about money, it can really affect your success.
So how can we develop a healthy mindset about money?
It starts with awareness, you know? Think about the beliefs you have about money and where they came from. Maybe you think you're just bad with money or that investing is only for rich people. Those are just beliefs, and you can change them. Surround yourself with positive influences. Read inspiring books. Listen to good podcasts. Remember, financial well-being, it's not just about the numbers. It's about freedom, security. It's about being able to live a life that you love.
I love that. So it's about taking control so that money doesn't control you. All right. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners before we wrap things up?
Just this. You have the power to change your financial future. It might take some work, but you can do it. Start today. Even if it's just one small thing, you won't regret it.
Great advice. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into personal finance. I hope you learned something new and that you feel empowered to take control of your finances.
It was great being here.
Thanks for listening, everyone. For more tips and insights on personal finance, be sure to follow us and stay tuned for more episodes.